Hello and thanks for tuning in. This is a ridiculously detailed video about the evolution of my exhaust system of my Ducati Streetfighter 848. If you're not really into technical details, you should stop watching now. Seriously, stop. But if you are that perverted, stay tuned. When the first Streetfighter was launched in 2009, it was equipped with some really awkward mufflers that were completely ruining the look of the bike. They were huge. And when the Streetfighter 848 came out a few years later, they hadn't improved anything on that. It was the same system completely, and it still looked like you were going scuba diving. And that was the first thing I wanted to change. Now, I had Monsters S2Rs before, and they were equipped with a larger canister underneath the swing arm, and this housed a catalyzer as well, which kind of doubled as a silencer, and it was very efficient. You really didn't need much more than that on that bike, and I was thinking that maybe I could use this idea on the Streetfighter as well. I bought my Streetfighter used, and it was well equipped. It had Termignoni double mufflers, but I didn't really like them, so I sold them and instead got myself a single muffler from SC Project. That's probably a nice muffler and setup, but it sat very awkwardly way out on the starboard side, so that had to be changed, and I swapped the original pipe for actually a flexible stainless hose, which enabled me to put the muffler a little bit further in towards the bike as well as further down. The SC Project collector also made the exhaust valve engine redundant. So I promptly removed that engine, and that shaved off some grams of course, but it also opened up a void underneath the seat where I could now fit my new lithium-ion battery, which is far lighter than the original lead battery, and now it was also located further down and further forward for a better center of gravity. Once you remove the exhaust valve engine, the ECU will go bananas unless you will trick it to believe that it's still there, and you will do that with the so-called servo body. But let's go back to my Monster S2R exhaust idea. I had found in a local scrapyard a stainless muffler from Aprilia. And with help from a professional welder, I managed to put together this. It's the SC Project collector together with the Aprilia muffler, all in stainless steel. The first version had just an end cap of the various designs I tried out, and it looked really cool. But unfortunately it was just way too noisy, as you can imagine. Either I had to suffocate it with some kind of decibel killer, or I had to add something more to it. So I started to experiment with various end pipes. First this shorter one, and that didn't do much difference really. So back to the professional welder, and he created a new end cap with an upturned pipe that allowed me to experiment with various end solutions. This version worked out nicely when it came to the sound level, but it looked awkward, so I went for version 10 where I extended the pipe. This ridiculously small end muffler had a decibel killer in it, and that's why the sound was perfect. But it was also so restricted that once I gunned the engine full throttle, the whole thing came off. Pretty stupid. So I swapped this one for an original Termignoni modified muffler which I had found in a scrapyard, and just cut it in half, and that worked out pretty decently, and that led me to believe that I could go smaller and still keep the sound within reasonable potatoes. But this version was also way too loud, so I realized that I need some more of a muffler, and I came up with this idea, inspired by tractors in fact. Now I was onto something, but it needed a little bit more, so I put a longer muffler in that position, and then eventually I added a backwards pointing end pipe that sort of doubled like a DB killer, and I was getting closer to the final product that came to look like this. So now finally the sound level was actually perfect, and it had this funky look that I think the Streetfighter deserved. Now you may disagree, but hey, it's my video. But my happiness only lasted until I put it in the dyno jet bench to see what the power output was, and it was quite a disappointment, and it was very clear that the exhaust wasn't breathing well enough. So back to the drawing board and back to the welder. So I had to come up with an idea with an exhaust with no real bottlenecks, as well as openings that were the same or slightly larger than the final openings of the original exhaust system, if that makes any sense. I was inspired by Chas Davis' Panigale with the mufflers underneath the seat, but building something like this would also mean that I had to protect the electronics from the heat from the exhaust. But as of now, that feels like it's a little bit too much work. So I will revert back to the double muffler system, sort of like the original one. However, it will be more of my style. I've now dismantled the last version of the exhaust, which included this double muffler. So now we're working on version, I don't know, 12, something like that. I'm keeping this. This is the collector, a silencer, a muffler from Aprilia, and then the end cap, which looks like this, which is from the same Aprilia muffler. Now obviously this has been much shortened in order to fit underneath the swing arm. On this one there will be kind of a snorkel design with this 90-degree angle pipe. See if it makes any sense. It's going to be cut like that. And then welded onto this one like that. It will go straight up, make a complete vertical turn upwards, and then in that one we will fit this one like that. So this one, it's probably not going to be that long. We'll cut it, and in the end here we'll have an end silencer with carbon fiber. It's going to look sort of like that. So it's going to be a mimic of this one. No, that's not going to be enough. You see, I need twice the flow. So here we will attach another one. So the whole thing will resemble the original setup with the parallel mufflers. It's not a design that I really fancy, but I need to do that. So I'm trying to make it as cool looking and as efficient as possible. And then of course there will be an equal carbon fiber end muffler there as well. So that will then open up the exhaust to the same level as the original one. Actually it will be a little bit better. It will be a little bit more open, but not as open as, for instance, a race exhaust, which is simply too noisy. So hopefully that will bring back the original power to the rear wheel, which should sit around 120 plus horsepower. That's what I'm hoping for. So some more fiddling around and some polishing of the pipes that were painted with the poor quality powder coating. We now have some nice pieces, and back to the welder. And at this stage it looks like this. There's some fitting that is still to be done, and these carbon fiber canisters will be of equal length, just like this. Now the next step was to figure out how to put the pieces together. With the first fitting they were very easy to put together, but they sat too tall with the risk of just frying the rear end of the motorcycle. The mufflers needed to come down lower. So after cutting the pipes I needed to figure out how to fit the pieces together without welding them together, because that would cause problems when changing the rear tire. So after a lot of thinking I came up with this solution of simply taking a smaller pipe and whack it in there, and then also make sure that it stayed there with some welding. Now the top section could slide onto this one, and then I would simply attach it with a bolt, a titanium bolt that would go straight through. I don't think that bolt will interfere with the gas flow too much. Before riveting all the pieces together, I decided to go bananas with the drill in order to prevent heat transfer to the carbon fiber, also make the mufflers work a little bit better, and perhaps save a few grams. So here we are, finally. This is the 1+2 muffler system, completely custom built. Now I need to fit it and then put the bike together and then start it up outside. But unfortunately, since it's dead cold winter here in Swedenland, that will take a little while. So you will simply have to sit and wait for the next video to hear the sound and see it in its full glory outdoors. But it will probably look something like this. Now, this is from when I was testing the fitment of the pieces, and it occurred to me that my homemade carbon fiber heel guard wasn't really big enough. There seems to be quite a big risk of me totally toasting my right boot. So I needed to design a new bigger one, and I started off by using this piece of cardboard as a template. And then I will cut out a carbon fiber piece from this leftover rear mudguard from my other bike, the Ducati Scrambler Desert Sled. So after some more cutting and grinding and filing and testing, it looks like this. And it's a little bit rough around the edges, but it does the trick, I think. I also put some aluminium tape on the back side to deflect some heat from the exhaust, hopefully. And when mounted, it looks pretty okay, looks decent. There's a bit of give there, which is fine, but this will stop my boot from melting. Finally, I like to add that I had the ECU remapped by local professionals, and it also meant that I could now remove the servo body as well as the lambda sensors. This meant that I had to fit some blind plugs, which I sealed with silicone to make them waterproof, as well as 2 titanium plugs for the holes in the exhaust where the lambda sensors were located. Oh look, leftovers! Well, thanks for staying awake this far, and I will see you in the next video. Stay tubed!
Forever young, I want